Okay, so we have gotten down to chapter 5. Chapter 4 closed. Well, let's just quickly take a look at how chapter 4 closes. Chapter 4 closed with "Let us," and one of those exhortations. Let us come, therefore come, and that's the conclusion too. Therefore, let us therefore come boldly to the throne of grace, that we may obtain mercy and find grace to help in time of need. So, because we have this great high priest, the high priest was the one that would intercede for the people, would go before the throne of God in the Holy of Holy place, and would make intercession for the people, would ask for forgiveness for the people, make a sacrifice for them. And so he's saying that Jesus is the high priest in the new order of things. And since we have this high priest that has passed through the heavens, uh, and we don't have a high priest that cannot sympathize with our weaknesses, which means we do have a high priest that can sympathize with us. He was tempted like we've all been, and yet without sin. Because we have that kind of a high priest, and here's the encouragement. The conclusion is, let us come boldly to the throne. You don't have to hem and haw and hedge your way to the throne like they did with kings a lot of the time when they didn't know how he was going to react, didn't know if they would understand the problem that you were going to bring to them. Jesus has been there, done that. He does understand. And so, with that as the background, then we go to chapter 5. And in chapter 5, he says, "For." That's one of those reasons. Here's why. And I put out the side, here's why we come boldly. He just said, let us come boldly. Well, here's why you come boldly. And everything you see on the page here is what he's talking about when he says, here's why. So we'll talk about it as we go. He says, every high priest taken from among men is appointed for men in things pertaining to God. So the high priests are for men. That's what their job is, to intercede for them. So he's talking about the function of the high priest, and what it is in things pertaining to God, they come for men, for the people, that he may offer both gifts and sacrifices for sins. So this is what that's what the high priest does, is offer gifts and sacrifices for sins. And the Day of Atonement was the big one, where he would go into the most holy place after he would go in for himself, sacrifice for himself, so he could be ritually clean in order to go in and make sacrifice for all the people. So, but that's what his job is. And it says in verse 2, he can have compassion on those who are ignorant and going astray, since, and that word "since" is like coming to a conclusion. Since he himself is also beset by weakness, and because he is beset by weakness, he can understand our problems. He says in verse 3, because of this, he is required, as for the people, also for himself, to offer sacrifices for sins. Now, the normal high priest that they had during their time under the old law, they were flawed. They committed sins. And so they had to offer for themselves first. But this high priest that he's talking about now, the new high priest, he doesn't have to make sacrifices for himself. He is the sacrifice for the people. That's what the word propitiation means, is the price paid for forgiving a debt. Jesus not only died for us, he is the sacrifice. Jesus is the Lamb of God that takes away the sins of the world. But he's talking about the old law high priest here when he's talking about having to offer for the people. But then now he says in the next verse, oh, pardon me, he says, and no man takes this honor to himself, but he who is called by God, just as Aaron was. The high priests were appointed by God. It was by his instructions that the high priest came into being. The first one, God says to Moses, your brother is going to be the high priest, the first high priest. And then after that, it's going to follow in the lineage of Aaron, who was also was a Levite. And so it was going to follow in the tribe of Levi on down. That's by God's instruction. Now, what puts a little caveat about that is in their time, the time of the writing of Hebrews, the high priests may or may not have been appointed by God. They may or may not have been of the fitting the qualifications that God put down in the Old Testament. And as a matter of fact, at the time that Jesus was put to death on the cross, he came before two high priests, remember, Annas and Caiaphas. Annas was the one appointed by God. He was the one of the proper lineage. But Pontius Pilate had come along and says, I don't like Annas very much. I'm going to put another guy in there. I'm going to put Caiaphas in because he's more favorable to the Romans. I can get along with him a little better. And so Caiaphas was, as far as the Romans were concerned, was the high priest. And since the Romans were in control, Caiaphas was the high priest for practical purposes. But whenever they had questions, they always went to Annas. The Jews I'm talking about, they always went to Annas. Let's talk about this. And the Sanhedrin, he was always there. To the Jews, Annas was the high priest. Gene, did you have a? I'm not positive, but I think Caiaphas was Annas' son-in-law. So he was related, but he wasn't. It was by marriage. So anyway, what he says here, no man honors himself with that. They're called by God, and just like that, in verse 5, he says, so also Christ did not glorify himself to become high priest, but it was he who said to him, you are my son, today have I begotten you. As he also says in another place, you are a priest forever, according to the order of Melchizedek. So Jesus didn't take this high priesthood on himself. It was given to him by the one who said, you are my son, this day have I begotten you. And who was that? That was God that did that. And so just like the high priests under the old law were called by God, so the new high priest, really, when I say new high priest, he really was the high priest looking forward. We've talked about types and antitypes before, right? The type is the old thing, the shadow from the Old Testament, and the antitype is the real thing, what you really see. All the high priests going in, offering for the people, offering sacrifices, all that was just a shadow of what was going to come when God brought his son into the world. Jesus was the antitype of many things, but one of which was the high priesthood. They were all a shadow. He's the real thing. And it was God that said to him, you're my son. I've begotten you today. And he also said, you're a priest forever after the order of Melchizedek. And this is found in Psalm 110, verse 4, if you want to look over there and see where he's quoting from. But as I wrote over in yellow there, this statement right here, you're a priest after the order of Melchizedek, this begins a comparison with a guy named Melchizedek, which we hear about in the Old Testament in Genesis chapter 14. And we're going to look at that. Well, I thought I had taken all those out. As you can see, I highlighted all the so, also, and as. Those are comparisons where he's comparing the high priest under Aaron with Christ, and comparing what God says in one place and another place. So anyway, I highlighted those, but I failed to highlight them as I went along. But anyway, what I thought we needed to do is read, going back to Genesis chapter 14. This is everything you see right here on this page is everything God had said about Melchizedek, but before the Hebrew writer wrote anything. So here's what it is, and the background to it is the children of Israel, when they well, they weren't even the children of Israel yet. This was in Abraham's time. Abraham had moved in to the area that would eventually be called Israel, and he had a nephew named Lot, and you've heard the stories about Lot and Lot's wife and Sodom and Gomorrah and all that. Anyway, at one point, some kings from the surrounding areas went and captured Lot and took all his family and all his flocks and herds and everything and took them off someplace. And when Abraham heard about it, he says, no, we're not going to let that happen. So he gathered his army, went and defeated those kings that had taken Lot and done some other damage as well. One of the king's name was Chedorlaomer, and I don't remember the other ones, but they were all just, kings of small nations around. So Abraham got Lot back. And on his way back from this defeat, as he was approaching Beersheba, where he lived, as he passed by this little town called Salem, which eventually was going to become a big town named Jerusalem, this guy came out and met him. And this guy, we'll just read it. Then Melchizedek, the son or the king of Salem, brought out bread and wine. He was a priest of God Most High. Now this is really strange to think about. They didn't even have Abraham wasn't a priest. None of what we think of as the priests that became priests in Israel even existed. But this guy is said he was a priest of God Most High, and he blessed him. He blessed Abraham. Blessed be Abraham of God Most High, possessor of heaven and earth. And blessed be God Most High, who has delivered your enemies into your hand. And he gave him a tenth of all. And the he here, the he here is Abraham. Abraham gave Melchizedek a tenth of everything that he had brought back with him, giving it a tenth to the priest of God. And this is all we know about Melchizedek. He was the king of Salem, which became Jerusalem later, and he was a priest. So he was a king and a priest at the same time. That never happened again until guess who came? Till Jesus came. And so here's another one of those types. Melchizedek was a type of guess who? Of Jesus. And here's where we learn that Jesus was the real one. Jesus was a priest of God after the order of Melchizedek. How was Melchizedek different from any other priest? He was also a king. And that's what no other priest was after the order of Melchizedek, because none of them were kings. In fact, they couldn't be by lineage. The priests under the old law, after Abraham came his children, and then eventually Jacob, and the 12 tribes of Israel became the nation of Israel, and then they had the priesthood, and when Moses delivered the law and all that, the priesthood was started, and but none of them ever, I mean, the priests were all from the tribe of Levi. The kings were from the tribe of Judah, eventually, when they got kings. So none of them were ever a king and a priest at the same time. But this new high priest that he's talking about in the book of Hebrews, he was a king and a priest. So that makes him a priest after the order of Melchizedek. So there's nothing complicated at all about Melchizedek. Nothing strange. We're going to see something. He's going to talk more about Melchizedek as we go. Just for the sake of those that might not be here when we talk about it, notice in this. Does it tell when Melchizedek came into being, or what his beginnings were? Does it tell what his endings were? So it's like he just shows up. No beginning, no end. Well, later that's going to be compared to Jesus, having no beginning, no end, because he's eternal, that kind of thing. We'll get, when we get up to it, we'll talk about that. But he's in the middle of a discussion now of Melchizedek and showing how he's comparing Jesus with Melchizedek. He's a priest after the order of Melchizedek. But now he's going to talk about Jesus some more. He said he's a priest after the order of Melchizedek, and then the next verse says, who in the days of his flesh, when he had offered up prayers and supplications with vehement cries and tears to him who was able to save him from death, and was heard because of his godly fear, though he was a son, yet learned he obedience by the things which he suffered. That's all one sentence. And it started back in verse 6. So whoever wrote the book Hebrews, it sounds a lot like Paul, because if you read Paul's epistles, there's a lot of long sentences there too. You have to break it down, because otherwise it can get confusing. But so he's talking about Jesus while he was in the days of his flesh, which means while he was walking the earth, during the time that he was living his 33 years that he lived on earth. During that time, he offered up prayers and supplications with vehement cries. Now, the prayers, that word means seeking or asking, just making a petition. Please, Lord, can you do this? And supplication is a stronger word. In the pink there, it shows the definition. It's a humble and earnest request or a petition made to God, often in time of need or distress. When did that ever happen? In the Garden of Gethsemane. Jesus, with tears and sweat as blood, made petition to God, Father, if it be possible, let this cup pass from me. Pardon? Yeah, well, yeah. Yeah, he certainly prayed to God a lot. I don't know how many of them were the supplication kind of things where he was with, was in time of need or distress, but there were surely numerous ones of those. He had been almost stoned a few times, and he was dealing with some people that weren't understanding what he was saying. I'm sure he was really frustrated and stuff. So he probably did some earnest requests along those lines as well. So he didn't just pray in the garden, but he certainly did there. And the reason we're talking about his death is what it says next. And tears to him who was able to save him from death. So we know that it was at the time of his death that he was offering these prayers and supplications, because if anybody could save him from death, who would be? God could. God could do anything he wanted. And Jesus could have done it himself if he had wanted to. But remember, over and over and over in his ministry, he kept saying, I don't do one thing. I don't do anything except what the Father tells me. So he's petitioning the Father If it's possible, let this go, but otherwise, whatever your will is, let it be done. Well, he prayed with supplications and prayers. He begged God with tears to save him, to let something else happen. And it says, and he was heard. That's a thing that we can really take into our hearts. If you pray for something and it doesn't happen, what do you usually think? Well, God didn't hear me. You know, uh, yeah. Well, and that's a good partial answer. The other part of the answer is maybe God heard me. He's listening, saying, Carl, this isn't good for you. I'm not going to do it. Or he could be saying, hold on, have some patience. It's coming, or whatever. He was heard, Barb. Yeah, yeah. That's a good example. So just because something doesn't happen when you think it should happen doesn't mean God didn't hear you. Jesus prayed earnestly, crying. I don't know how many times you've been on your knees in in a garden somewhere, pleading with God and crying, and tears and sweat is blood. I don't know how many times anybody's done that, but that's what Jesus did. But yet, and God said, "I hear you, but this has to happen. You have to pay the price for everyone, or our whole plan goes out the window." So he prayed and he was heard. And why was he heard? Because of his godly fear. I don't do anything except for what the Father says. I respect God so much, I won't do one thing unless he tells me. And so God heard him because of his godly fear. And in addition to that, even though he was a son, I mean, if a guy's going to listen to anybody make a petition to him, who's it going to be? His own son. Now, if I go to Gene and say, Gene, please, can I have $1,000? Or Sue hates me to use money as an example, but uh, if I ask you for anything, but your son comes along and says, Dad, I need the same thing. Who are you going to give it to? You're going to give it to your son first. If you have enough money or have enough whatever, you're going to give it to him. There's that money thing again. That's Lowell Williams that did that to me. He always used to use money for his examples about everything. But Gene? Right. He didn't love anybody more than anybody else. But it does mean that when you love, you can you might cause things to happen that whoever you love don't like, but is it for their best? Was it for Jesus's best for that to happen? Of course, that's what he came for. He came to seek and save the lost. He came to be the Lamb of God that takes away the sins of the world. If God didn't override his cries and pleading, he wouldn't have accomplished what he came for. And what he says in verse 9, we'll see there, but we'll get to it in just a second. Even though he was a son, if God would hear anybody's prayer, it's going to be his own son. Even though he was a son, yet he learned obedience by the things which he suffered. Now, why did he suffer? It was for us, right? To take away the sins of the world. Did he learn anything from it? Yeah, he did. I don't want to do this, but if that's what it takes, and the things that he suffered, he learned obedience. He knew this is what obedience really looks like. It's doing stuff even when it goes against every grain of your being. You know, you want to save your own life, kind of thing. He obeyed God and learned what obedience really means. Gene? Exactly. And he wouldn't be here, he wouldn't be in heaven either if he hadn't been obedient. So, but anyway, he learned obedience by the things that he suffered. And in addition to all that he just said, having been what? Perfected, he became the author of eternal salvation to all who obey him. So this going to the cross, after pleading that can anything else do this? Can we do this another way? But yet he was obedient. He went to the cross. And by doing that, he became perfected. He hadn't completed his job until the word perfected here. That word means complete. It can mean perfect, like we think of perfect, but it means complete, accomplished everything that needs to get accomplished. And that's when he suffered. He accomplished everything that he was supposed to accomplish. What's one of his 7 sayings on the cross? It is finished. I've done what I came to do. And so he was perfected as he died on the cross. And by doing that, what happened? He became the author of eternal salvation. He didn't just save our life here on this earth. He became the author of eternal salvation to all who believe in him, all who obey him. Do we have to believe? Yes. You read that plenty of places, but you have to put it all together here. Obey, the definition means to hearken to a command. That is to obey or be obedient or to submit to. That's what he requires of us. We can have eternal salvation if we obey him. Now, does it take faith to obey him? Yeah. Did it take faith for Jesus to obey God? He certainly, if he didn't believe that God could raise him up and accomplish the rest of the purpose, if he didn't believe that, he wouldn't have done it. Abraham, when he was told to sacrifice his son, the one that was the promised son that all his lineage was supposed to come through, that God had promised him, if he didn't believe that God could do whatever it took to make that happen, he would never have raised that knife. But it was that kind of faith that caused him to be obedient. Gene?
Come down from the cross and we will believe. He thought that staying on the cross to prove he is not the Son of God and actually prove he's the opposite.
Yeah, good point. Okay, before we go to the next page, anybody got anything to say about what's up here right now? Okay, we're not done with the sentence, by the way. Starts, having been perfected, he became the author of eternal salvation to all who obey him, comma, called by God. God was the one that called him as high priest according to the order of Melchizedek. We've just been talking about who this Melchizedek, the Hebrew writer has already said this, called by God as high priest according to Melchizedek. He's repeating it for emphasis' sake. And then he says, of whom, that is about Melchizedek, of whom we have much to say and hard to explain. Since. Now, what does the word since signify? Here's why. This is one of those other words besides the little word for that indicates a reason. I have things to say. It's hard to explain it, and here's why. You've become dull of hearing. Your mind has been clogged up. You just haven't been listening very good. And then he says in verse 12, for, that's one of those here's why words. You become dull of hearing, and here's why it's hard to explain. He says, though by reason of time you ought to be teachers, That word ought means to be under obligation. We, people are under obligation to be able to teach, to be able to answer anybody of the hope, a reason of the hope that's in you, yet with meekness and fear. In over in some amount of time for each person, they need to progress to the point where they could be a teacher. But he says, though by this time you Hebrews that I'm writing to, you ought to be teachers. You need someone to teach you again the first principles of the oracles of God. Just the basic rudiments of things: repentance, faith, baptism, those things. You've been around a long time as a Christian, and you don't even know enough to tell anybody else about the very rudiments of the first principles of the oracles of God. And because of that, you can't understand what I wanted to tell you about Melchizedek. And he says, you need someone to teach you the first principles of the oracles of God. You have come to need milk and not solid food. Um, he explains more, so there's no point in me explaining um, about milk and solid food. I think we all know it anyway. But notice what he says next. He says, "For here's why. Here's why they need to be taught again is because everyone who partakes of milk is unskilled in the word of righteousness. He's a babe. He can't even teach, he can't even talk about the rudiments of the first principles of the oracles of God because he's just a baby. And so he needs the milk, the baby stuff. And he's going to explain what the baby stuff is in a little bit. But it says that's why they need to be taught again because they're just a baby. They shouldn't be. As a Christian, they're 15 years old or 40 years old or 5 years, whatever. You're not a baby anymore when you get to be 5 years, right? You know, and the physical thing. If you see a mom hand a 10-year-old a baby bottle and says, "Here, have some lunch," what do you think? There's a problem here. Well, you see a Christian that's 10 years old as a Christian, and you hand them a bologna sandwich, and they choke on it because they can't digest it or can't chew it. You think, is that a problem? Yeah, that's a problem. Well, the meat. And that's been a real fault of the preachers and teachers, you know, and elderships as well. We got to lift everybody up. We need everybody to be progressing. You shouldn't have to say, you know, you come across a friend you want to teach the gospel to and say, well, I don't really know how to do it, but I'll get the preacher to tell you, or one of our elders or one of our other teachers. If you've been a Christian for 10 years, you shouldn't have to get somebody else to do it for you. And so um, this is serious business, very serious business that he's talking about, and the Hebrew writer is not pulling any punches as he talks here. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they didn't understand the spiritual concept of anything. It was just all taking everything literal, word by word, and fine-tooth combing it all, and they totally missed the whole point. Okay, good point. Um, so anyway, it's by reason. Um, but then he says, but here's the contrast. On the one hand, you got a baby that needs milk. On the other hand, here's a contrast. Solid food belongs to those who are of full age. That is, those who by reason of use have their senses exercised to discern both good and evil. And so, as you age as a Christian, as you become of full age as a Christian, if you don't use what you're learning, if you don't exercise the things that you're learning, if you just write it down, take notes, and go home and do whatever the rest of the week, if you don't uh, chew on chew on what you're learning and and use it, exercise it, well, what happens? What happens when you eat food and you go home and sit on the couch? You get hungry again, and you gain weight. You get thick, and it gets harder and harder to do anything. You got to exercise in order to have a body, and the same thing is true with in spiritually. If you don't exercise what you're learning, if you don't eat the food and then exercise it, it's not going to help you. Barb? Yeah, yeah, good point, Randy. Yes. Yeah, and what he's saying here, I mean, what you're saying is a really good point. When he says having your senses, what you think with, exercised to discern both good and evil. You're trying to discern, is this good or is this evil? Which is which? Is this good or bad? If you don't exercise what you're learning, you're not going to know. Well, that sounds pretty good to me. If you don't soak it up, what God's word says about it, somebody comes along, hey, how about this? Why don't we do this? Wait, no, no, wait a minute. I've been doing my push-ups on God's word, and it says, no, no, no. That's not a good thing for us to do. Uh, so yeah, you have to exercise the spiritual food that exercise what you're learning, so that you can tell the difference between right and wrong about things, good things and bad things. Yeah. 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 Well, it's past time to stop. I appreciate everybody's comments and input, things like that. Hope it's been encouraging to you. This is a scolding part of the book of Hebrews, but it's one that we need to take to heart. There's plenty of encouragement in this book, but here in this one place, he calls these. As too bad we couldn't get to it, because he does start giving them, even them, that he's saying, you're babes, you need to be taught. He gives them compliments. Next week we'll get to those compliments, and if you're not going to be here next week, go ahead and read the rest, the next couple of chapters, because he doesn't just stop with a rebuke. He gives encouragement as well. Okay, thank you guys for your attention, and we'll be back again at 11 o'clock for our worship. Good morning once again. Glad to have all you with us. Such a beautiful day to come together to worship God. The lesson this morning is going to be a little bit different from the ones that we've been hearing for quite a while. Hopefully, it'll be good for everybody. But I'm basing it on, at least partly basing it on this scripture out of 1 Corinthians chapter 1. Paul says, "For it is written, I will destroy the wisdom of the wise, and bring to nothing the understanding of the prudent. Where is the wise? Where is the scribe? Where is the disputer of this age? Has not God made foolish the wisdom of this world?" As you can tell, there's some math formulas there. I put it there just to represent science in general. Back many years ago, when I was a freshman in college, had an English teacher of all things. I didn't even know how it came up, but somehow the subject of evolution came up, and I happened to express an opinion about it, and he just blatantly said, "I can't even talk to you if you think it's a theory. If you don't accept it as fact, I can't even talk to you." Recently, every so often I'll watch a YouTube video by one of the scientists that do YouTube videos, Neil deGrasse Tyson, Brian Cox, other ones like that. And it just makes me get kind of angry when I hear them talking and acting like they know so much. And then there's books by the atheist scientists like Richard Dawkins and Christopher Hitchens and Carl Sagan, billions and billions of years ago. You know that Carl Sagan's. These all atheist scientists who blatantly do not believe in God and are not afraid to say it. They even look down their noses at people that do, and they think they are so smart. We have science to back us up. Well, let's talk about science today a little bit. I'm going to go back to the same year that this college professor scorned me for believing in that evolution was a theory. In 1967, all the textbooks the teachers, an ice age is coming. There's a cooling trend. There's going to be an ice age approaching. Next 1,000 years or so, we'll have an ice age. Well, bring it up to 2007. What do you have? Well, first of all, they trashed the idea of an ice age coming and came up with this idea about global warming. All of a sudden, science said there's an ice age coming, and then 30, 40, 50 years later, no, there's not. There's warming trend, we're going to burn up. And if we don't do something, we're going to all die in 12 years. Well, that was about 15 years ago. Anyway, we'll go back to 67 again for a minute. Oh, pardon me. I must have repeated this. I don't know whether I hit backwards or what. We need to go forward a little bit. Okay, we'll go to 1995. Back then, the universe, according to science, was 8 billion years old. We know that because we measure the redshift of the planets or the stars and blah, blah. And we calculated it all out, did our mathematics, and came up with 8 billion years old. All right, move ahead to 2025, our age. I don't know, it was 2025 or 2024 that they put up the James Webb Space Telescope. But now, all of a sudden, trash, the 8 billion now is 13.4 billion years old. And according to, I can't remember whether it was, which one of those guys on the internet that I listened to the other day, he says, it's undisputable fact. We measured it. Oh, you took a yardstick and you measured the universe? No, they do all the math. That they do the redshifts and they whatever they do with being able to see farther out now with the Webb. Well, I thought they measured it back in 1995 and said it was 8 billion years old. Arrogance there. Let's skip to go back to 2020. Everybody remembers what happened in 2020, right? Remember COVID? Remember COVID ventilators? Skip up to 2025. Well, we know what happened about the ventilators. They trashed that idea. How many people died from ventilators? The science said we need to do this. They did it. They said, screaming, follow the science. You know, you don't want to mask up. Follow the science. This is what you have to do. Well, let's take a look at science over time a little bit. We've already done it right in these things just before, but let's go through some more science things. Back 500 years ago, the Earth was flat. I don't know how it got to be round, but back then you talk to a scientist and the Earth is flat. All you have to do is look out there and see it's flat. The evidence says it's flat. A little bit later, even maybe the same time, they were saying this Earth is the center of the solar system. The sun revolves around us. We're the center center of everything. A little bit self-centered, but that's kind of how scientists are. But we know now the Earth is not the center of everything. It's not even the center of our little bitty solar system that we've got here. We're just a little planet circling a big star, actually not even that big of a star. And there's tons of other stuff out there. But science one time said the Earth was the center of the solar system. But do they say that now? Nope. How about bloodletting? Back in the medieval times, you got some malady, they would say, oh, come over to me, to the doctor. In fact, the barbers were doctors. And they would take a razor and open up a vein and, let's see, let's let out a quart, maybe see if that does it, you know. Well, what do we know now? Is that really good for you? Not so much. Doesn't cure anything. Sometime, I can't remember when, they decided Pluto that Pluto was discovered, and oh, this is the new planet. Yeah, this is the planet. And then all of a sudden, not too long ago, uh, it was a planet, but now it's not. Who told us it was a planet in the first place? Was it a theologian? No, it was scientists. Now who's telling us it's not? It's scientists are telling us it's not really a planet after all. Then you have the age of the Earth. They've come up with all different ages of how old the age of Earth is. I just read something, I think it was even just yesterday, a meteor went through the roof of somebody's house down south somewhere. Just tiny little thing went through and through the roof, all the way through the rafters and everything, and made a hole in the floor. And some scientists measured how old it is, and it's older than the Earth. Okay? Anyway, they never have decided how old the Earth really is, but they're scientists. They know stuff. Then you have the Big Bang. They used to call it an explosion. Start off with one tiny little thing, just the size of a cubic centimeter, weighed billions of, how many millions and trillions of tons, and it exploded, and poof, everything expanded out. Well, now, no. Oh, wait, it isn't an explosion. It's an expansion. Everything's expanding at once from everywhere. If you can put your head around that idea, somehow I can't. But that's what they're saying now. It didn't start from one point. It started from everywhere and just expanded. That's all I can say about it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That kind of stuff happens all the time. Well, I want to look real quick at the definition of science to start with. Oxford Dictionary says it's a systematic study of the structure and behavior of the physical and natural world through observation, experimentation, and the testing of theories against the evidence obtained. They refuse to accept that a theory is not a fact. They call it a theory, and they try to test the theories, but then they count it as fact. Well, they're still testing the theory. Evolution is still a theory, but are they calling it that? No. Are they treating it like that? No. They refuse to accept the facts about the whole situation. There's a group called the Science Council. I don't know what their qualifications are. I just read this. Everything you read on the internet is true, right? So I don't know. I can't verify the Science Council, but here's what they say. Science is the pursuit and application of knowledge and understanding of the natural and social world following a systematic methodology based on evidence. Notice these two words. Pardon me, before we look at the two words. It says science methodology includes following one being objective observation. In other words, actually seeing something happen, feeling it, touching it, hearing it, whatever, but actually observing something happening. Measurement and data, possibly, although not necessarily, using mathematics as a tool. And then when the math doesn't work, they just throw in some kind of a constant. Well, we have to adjust the formulas by putting some constant that they invent. And once you plug this thing in, which comes out of nowhere, you plug that in, then all the math works. Well, that's how they do it. But then it says it's based on evidence. Add up evidence and stuff. Well, it depends on how you interpret evidence as to what you take it. They see an animal and it goes from, it makes a little tweak, a little change from one generation to the next, and they say that's evolution. But there's no evidence that any animal ever went from one species to another, which would be true evolution if it was. There's no evidence of that. Nobody's ever seen it. Nobody's, unless I'm really wrong, nobody's ever going to see it. But They haven't seen it. They can't say, well, we saw it, or we've seen it, we've observed that happening. No, you haven't. You've observed some little changes, uh, but not actual evolution. But anyway, and then by experiment and or observation as benchmarks for testing hypotheses, uh, doing inductive reasoning to establish general rules and conclusions drawn from facts or examples. The law of thermodynamics, first and second laws of thermodynamics are based on observation, and they're the benchmarks of testing, but now they don't even want to believe the laws of thermodynamics anymore, even though they called them laws once. Anyway, repetition, you see something happen over and over again, you kind of can draw some conclusions about that. How many times have they ever seen evolution happen? I haven't even seen it once, let alone repetition. Then critical analysis. All right, we've got all the facts. Now let's analyze that, and we'll critically take a look. Well, guess who that depends on? Human beings, to analyze and interpret things correctly. Then there's verification and testing. Okay, we've seen it happen. Let's verify that. We'll test it, do it again. Critical exposure to scrutiny, peer review, and assessment. Peer review is almost comical. To listen to other guys, nobody agrees with half of the stuff that they say. All the scientists say different stuff about everything, and yet they think they know it all. Now, here's where I meant this is how I should have put the other part. There's two words in here. Take a look at them. Natural and social. Do you see the spiritual realm in there anywhere? They totally deny that there is even a spiritual realm. I mean, one huge part of existence, and it doesn't even hit their radar. They don't even can't, because they can't touch it. Well, there's a lot of things that they believe that they can't touch, but we'll talk about that in a minute. I want to look that I didn't, just have to take it for what it is, because it's the best in the world ball, giant balloon, and it's filled with all the knowledge that's in the world. Every bit of the knowledge of the world is in this ball. All these, I just put little big balls, different kinds of knowledge, and different amounts and different clumps or whatever. That's all my imagination, but just it's all the knowledge in the world. How much of this do you think man possesses? 99%, 50%, 25, 10, 5. Well, I chose one of these balls, one of those little, if you look just to the right-hand side of the awl and watch what happens, one of these balls comes out, and I just picked a random one, small one. Just say that is what scientists know about the universe. Really, am I exaggerating? Probably, I probably am, actually. Probably not even that much. But it's not any more than that. But scientists, that's how much they know about the universe, and they're trying to tell us. They know everything, that they know. They know the universe is this big. They know that God, there couldn't be a God. They know all this stuff. They know that, not theory. They know that stuff. Fact is, we don't even know how much we don't know. There's a bunch, we don't know how much knowledge there is out there, but we know we don't know it all, and we know that we don't even come close to knowing it all. So should we trust that we have arrived at absolute truth about the universe based on this amount of knowledge? Really? It's ridiculous for them to stand up and just, we know all this, just puffing their chests out. Few people that believe in God, sorry, we can't even talk to you, kind of thing. Well, we should be looking down our noses at them. That's how ridiculous things are. We'll talk about how God thinks about it in a minute, but just to illustrate the point a little bit, just read what it says there. You're on the operating table, getting ready to have surgery performed on your heart. And the doctor says, "Did anybody tell you that I only know 1/100th of what there is to know about this surgery? If they haven't put you under yet, what are you going to do? Excuse me, you get me off this table. I want somebody here that knows how to perform this surgery, knows everything that they need to know about it." That's the same way it is with the scientists. They know 1/100th of what they need to know to be starting to make proclamations about the universe, but yet they're so uh, egotistical that they just state everything just like it's fact, like they know it, and they don't even blink an eye when they change their mind. Oh, well, yeah. We redid the math. Here it is. This is how it is now. This is really, follow the science. Listen to that. One of the things that really bugs me is when they compare science versus faith. The way they take it, it's either or. It's either science, you follow the science, or you can follow your faith, take a flying leap, and believe in God. It's one or the other. It's either science or it's faith. Well, when it comes right down to it, science is full of faith. Science itself is full of faith. I'm just going to list a few. They have faith that their methods are sound. Now, they've used methods all down through the years and found out, oops, we didn't consider this. We changed this because we hadn't thought of this. Their methods weren't sound. Yet, right now, oh, yeah, our methods are sound now. But they're taking it by faith. They don't know absolutely certain that their methods are sound. They've got plenty of evidence to show that they're probably not because they've changed their minds so many times. They have faith that their data is complete. Back when they said the world the universe is 8 billion years old, we got all the data. We've collected it all. We know. Well, put James Webb's telescope up. Oh, hey, there's more out there that we didn't realize. There's things that we hadn't seen. Well, what happened? Well, we got more data, and so now we believe it's 13.4 million years old. But they've always had faith that their data is complete, but it probably is never going to be complete, is it? They have faith that their data is accurate. Now, we've measured, we know this. And then they get better tools. Oh, well, our tool had this problem with it, and it wasn't accurate. Now we have the accurate one. Do they? They have faith that it does. They believe it. They have faith that their conclusions are unbiased. Don't we have faith in our own conclusions that we're unbiased? But half the time we are biased, right? It's faith, et cetera, et cetera. There's so many ways that science is based on faith. Just like our faith in God is faith. We trust it, but is it blind faith? We're jumping off a cliff? Or is there evidence? Well, we all know, everyone sitting here knows that there's evidence of it. Well, scientists want to look at it like this. Faith is, you go this way. If you want reason, you go this way. But I'm here to tell you that it's like this. There's no arrows going anywhere. Faith and reason are right there in the same place, and they're copacetic. They go together. Faith and reason do go together. Now I want to look for a little bit about what God has to say about it. Job and his friends were busy discussing why Job was in such miserable straits, why such terrible things had happened to him, and all the three friends were saying, no, it's because of this, it's because of this. You sinned, you did this or that. And Job would come back and say, no, that's not how it happened. And this is how God thinks. And they all thought they knew what God was thinking about this situation. Well, here is what God said to Job and his friends when they were talking like they knew everything about everything. What God said in Job 38, who is this who darkens counsel by words without knowledge? You guys are talking and you don't even know what you're talking about. Now prepare yourself like a man, Job, and I will question you, and you will answer me. Get ready, Job, because I'm going to ask you some questions, and you tell me what the answers were. He starts off, where were you when I laid the foundation of the earth? Tell me, if you have understanding, you know so much, tell me, where were you when I laid the foundation of the earth? Who determined its measurements? Surely you know. Now, just before we go any farther, just think about it. He's talking to Job. Job lived at least 2,000 years before Christ, so that's 4,000 years ago. We've learned a few things since then. Some of the things we're going to see here is we know now, or we think we know at least, um, and probably do. Um, but he's asking this question. But what I want us to think about is to these science, how would God talk to these science people of science today? How many of these things that he's going to talk about does it still apply? Who determined its measurements? Well, we know the Earth is so many miles around. We have actually measured that, um, and things. So, but had anybody in Job's time done that? No. So he says, who did that? Surely you know. Who stretched a line upon it? Did you measure it out? Or who laid its cornerstone? How did it get started? When the morning stars sang together and all the sons of glory shouted for joy. Now he mentions the stars singing. What stars sing? Well, since then, in recent times, the scientists have discovered that the stars do emit sounds. They do have, you could call it a song, however, but they emit a sound. But Job certainly couldn't have known that. And all the sons of God shouted for glory. All the angels and those. Were you there when that happened? Or who shut the sea with doors when it burst forth and issued from the womb? When I made well, before we go any farther, when did we first figure out that there were doors in the ocean, doorways into the earth where water can come out, springs come forth, and that? Job certainly didn't know anything about that. We just recently discovered that there were such a thing. He says, when I made the clouds its garment and thick darkness its swaddling band, when I fixed my limit for it, I set bars and doors. When God was making the earth, he set limits on things where the clouds could go and that sort of thing. And when I said, thus far you may come, talk about the water of the oceans, thus far you may come, no farther. Here your proud waves must stop. God is the one that set the limits on it. And God says to Job, were you there when that happened? Did you do it? Did you set it? No, you don't have a clue how that happened even. And scientists may have an idea of it, and they may be right about it now, but they may not be right about that even. He says, have you commanded the morning since your days began and caused the dawn to know its place? Did you set it up so that there was a morning and evening, that kind of thing, that it might take hold of the ends of the earth and the wicked be shaken out of it? It takes on form like clay under a seal. The world came together and stands out like a garment. From the wicked their light is withheld, and upraised arm is broken. I'm just going to read through some of this so that lesson doesn't go too long. But he says, have you entered the springs of the sea? We've already talked about that, the doors opening, the springs of the sea. Did you go there? Have you seen it? Have you walked in search of the depths? Of course he hadn't. A rhetorical question God's asking Job. Have the gates of death been revealed to you? Do you know how it is that people die, what actually happens? We know a lot more about it now than Job did, but do we really know about death and what it all means? We don't even know it now. Have you comprehended the breadth of the earth? We know that now. He didn't. Tell me if you know all this. Where is the way to the dwelling of light? Do you know where light comes from? Nope. Scientists may have some ideas about it, but we don't know where light comes from. Christians have a better idea of it. It comes from God. But for science, do they know where light comes from? And darkness, where is its place? We know about dark matter, but we haven't a clue what it is or where it comes from or anything like that. That you may take it to its territory. Can you put darkness where it belongs? No. Do you know it because you were born then? Or because the number of your days is great? Were you there when this all happened? And of course you weren't. Have you entered the treasury of snow? Or have you seen the treasury of hail, which I have reserved for time of trouble, for the battle and war? By what way is light diffused, or the east wind scattered over the earth? How does that happen? How does light work? Scientists has made progress. They know some stuff about it, but they don't know everything there is to know about light. They're just recently finding out that uh, it's both. Oh, I just read it. I'm no scientist. It's both particles and something else is what is what light is. But they just recently found that out. But anyway, I'm not even gonna read the rest of this. There's more stuff, but he just keeps going over the stuff that scientists think they know or say they know, but they weren't there. They don't know any of this stuff. Well, I want to read a couple passages out of the New Testament and one more out of the Old Testament, but my time's getting close. So 1 Corinthians chapter 1, Paul says, "For it is written, I will destroy the wisdom of the wise and bring to nothing understanding of the prudent. Where's the wise? Where's the scribe? Where's the disputer of this age? Has not God made foolish the wisdom of this world? For since in the wisdom of God, the world through wisdom did not know God." Their idea of wisdom, they don't even recognize God. And that's true today also with these scientists, atheist scientists. The world through wisdom did not know God. But it pleased God through the foolishness of the message preached to save those who believe. The Jews request a sign, and the Greeks seek after wisdom. The scientists would be the Greeks in this. They're seeking after wisdom. They just want facts. They just want to do science. They're seeking after. But Paul says, but we preach Christ, the power of God and the wisdom of God. That's where it all is. That's where it all started. That's who was there when it all began. That's who was there that created it all. And he says, because the foolishness of God is wiser than men. The silliest thing that God ever did is wiser than the wisest thing man ever did. And the weakness of God is stronger than men. For you see that not many wise according to the flesh, not many mighty, not many noble are called. But God has chosen the foolish things of this world to put to shame the wise. And God has chosen the weak things of the world to put to shame things which are mighty, and the things which are not, to bring to nothing the things that are, that no flesh should glory in his presence, as it is written, he who glories, let him glory in the Lord. Notice that part where it says, and things which are not, to bring to nothing the things that are. Scientists say there's no such thing as spiritual things. There's no such thing as this or that. They're things that they say are not, but they really are. These things that they're saying don't even exist, they put to shame the ones who are I can't even think of the word, that are trying to prove that God doesn't exist by it. But he says, as it's written, he who glories, let him glory in the Lord. Don't glory in yourself. These guys just vaunt themselves up and they glory in themselves. Isaiah, God says this, therefore, behold, I will once again deal marvelously with this people, wondrously marvelous, and the wisdom of their wise men will perish, and the discernment of their discerning men will be concealed. And they say, who sees us? Who knows us? These guys that don't believe in God, they're just going around doing whatever they want to do. Nobody's up there looking at us. They say that. But he says, you turn things around. You got it all backwards, people. Shall the potter be considered equal with the clay, that what is made should say to its maker, he did not make me? Isn't that what scientists say? No, nobody made me. It just happened by accident. God didn't make me. Or what is formed say to him who formed it, he has no understanding. There's a God out there. He didn't know what he's talking about. No God would do this or that, whatever. Say all kinds of stuff. And one more passage, Romans chapter 1. For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who suppress the truth in righteousness, because what may be known of God is made known or manifest in them. For God has shown it to them. For since the creation of this world, the invisible attributes are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so that they're without excuse. God has shown it to all these guys. All they have to do is open their eyes and see there's something far greater than us. There's something far more intelligent than anything here. All you have to do is look around and you see there's intelligence involved here. This couldn't have happened by accident. There's design and all that. They don't see it, but they are without excuse because God has shown it to them. Because though they knew God, they did not glorify him as God. They won't recognize God. They've shut their minds totally to it, nor were they thankful, but became futile in their thoughts, and their foolish hearts were darkened. Well, there was a time when scientists believed in God, but over time, their foolish hearts have been darkened, and they don't even believe. But professing to be wise, they became fools, who exchanged the truth of God for a lie, and worshiped and served the creature themselves rather than the Creator, who is blessed forever. So, we've been talking about man's intelligence. Where is it going? I'll tell you where it's going. This is one of the things that man's intelligence has brought into this world. More recently, we have something else that is just as dangerous, a thing called AI. We have data centers, even over in East Wenatchee. We have one of these. I zoomed in on just one area, and you can't even hardly see it. But just one of these racks here contains up to 10 hard drives and up to 20. Let's see what it is. Up to at least 20 terabytes in each one of those little things on a rack. And the rack, how many racks they have. We'll look at another picture. Here's a data center. Just look at rows and rows and rows and racks of knowledge that they keep feeding knowledge in, and then writing programs to say, go look at this knowledge and make decisions about this knowledge. And we call that artificial intelligence. I just put one more picture in there. Data centers all over the place, packed with knowledge. Each individual rack, this tall stack, can hold I think they said 3 petabytes, if you've ever even heard of that word. But that's 1,000 terabytes is a petabyte, and a terabyte is 1,000 gigabytes, I think. Anyway, it's a lot of knowledge, theoretically, that's stored in there. And then they're writing these programs to take that knowledge and do stuff with it. Now look at some things that I found. Again, it's on the internet, so take it for what it is, but you can look for yourself. But this video says, you have no idea how terrified AI scientists actually are. AI scientists are worried about the potential extinction of humanity due to the development of superintelligent AI, which could surpass human intelligence and pose a threat to our existence. Here's another quote. AI's first kill, and why top experts say there's a 70% risk of extermination from AI. AI is becoming more human-like, but its moral compass is still developing. Experiments show that AIs are willing to harm humans to achieve their goals. That's scary, right? Yoshua Ben-Chio, the world's most cited computer scientist and the godfather of artificial intelligence, is deadly concerned about, and it just cuts it off there. I didn't fill out the rest of the article. One of the guys that is inventing AI, deadly concerned. One more. Fears around uncontrollable AI are growing. Max Tegmark, Future of Life Institute, has called for a pause on the development of advanced AI systems. Telemark is concerned about it. So we got to stop this because it can get out of control. And so this is where man has gotten himself to, almost creating a thing that will come to his own, make his own extinction happen. It's kind of, I was thinking about it just this morning. I was thinking about it. You and I, are God's AI. When he gave us intelligence and says, you know, and let it go. But he was smart enough to put it someplace where it couldn't affect everything, couldn't affect heaven. We can blow this place up. We can do what this thing's talking about. This AI that we have of ourselves making stupid decisions and all that, it just shows where man's intelligence is going. I'm just going to requote this. Professing to be wise, they became fools, exchanged the truth of God for a lie, worshipped and served the Creator rather than the creature rather than the Creator, who is blessed forever. Worshipping ourselves, scientists worshiping themselves, or worshiping science rather than worshiping God. That's where science is. We need to not be ashamed. The things that we just read, all those foolish things God made to make foolish the wisdom of this world. We have the wisdom of God, and we should be proud of it. We should be, instead of cowering to the side and oh, these people know so much. No, we know what the truth is. Don't bow down to it. So anyway, I just wanted to leave you with that. It just was making me mad listening to some of those videos, and I thought it'd be good to say something about it. So anyway, I'm going to leave it here. This hasn't been a lesson to teach you how to obey the gospel. If there's anyone here that needs to and wants to, you can come forward at any time. But in the meantime, just take this home and think about it. Think about some of the arrogance of science, and should you place your faith in it, take some of these facts and people that you know that are putting their faith in science, ask them those same questions. Anyway, I'm leaving it with you there. So Gene's going to lead us in this song, Only a Step. If you need to be obedient to the gospel, come while we stand and sing this song.